Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. I am Troy Otradovic, as always, joined with Evan Watallison. Evan, it is a heat wave in Pennsylvania today. What is the weather like out in Wisconsin? It's almost 40 degrees in Pennsylvania today after a snowstorm this morning.
Hey, it's beach weather here in Wisconsin. I'm looking on my way home from work right now. I'm looking at the temperature in my car, and it says 49 degrees. I might have to throw on my swim trunks and head up the beach.
Well, I was going to throw my Speedo on and run around the parking lot. So, yeah, it's that close.
We don't want you arrested.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a good sight anyway. Yeah, well, Troy and Speedo don't get along. Those two words shouldn't.
Like I said, we don't want you arrested.
Yeah, kind of like doing the show every day, so we'll stay away from that. But with that said, bud, we got a great show today. We got the.
I like having a co-host, so.
Well, that's good. I kind of like having you over there too, and every once in a while we throw the crazy lady in. So, it's like one big happy family. The Light Sports Ramble family. Evan, Troy, and the crazy lady. That doesn't sound so good. But with that said, bud, we have a great show today. We're going to talk about the NFL Scouting Combine happening this weekend in Indianapolis. And I told you, but I'll fill the listeners in. This is a great experience. The players have a great chance to go out and showcase their skill, show their speed. I was lucky enough last year. I went to a website called One Iota, and they have what's called the NFL Fan Experience. And I had a chance, Evan, last year to be part of the first day with the offensive linemen, the tight ends. So I was able to watch some of the 40-yard dash times, and it was pretty cool. And Marshall Faulk was commentating from the field during the breaks on the Jumbotron, and we had a little pocket radio, one like a Bluetooth, that we had in so we could hear him talk. It was awesome. So if anybody ever has a chance to go to the Combine, I would suggest you do. It is a wonderful experience. Fed us well too. We got a free breakfast, got a free lunch, and it wasn't no McDonald's breakfast, Evan. It was a pretty nice spread. So I was excited for that. But with that said, yeah, what we're going to do today, we talked about it. We're just going to chat about some of those players that we're excited to take a look at this weekend. I know you and I will be watching on the TV and watching the highlights, but it is live. I'll probably try to catch as much as I can.
Actually,
go ahead.
I finally get to watch it this year. I have NFL Network for a change, and I get to finally watch it. Time Warner took forever to get NFL Network, and now they do.
Well, that's great. I'll tell you what, because I think it's a great event. I think the announcing and the way that it's all laid out is great because we get to learn a lot about these players. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about those players we're excited to see, and then we're going to talk about those players that we really want to look at because they may be wearing green and gold next year. So with that said, bud, before we get into that, though, there's a topic at the Combine that it almost could be a Saturday rant for us, but it's Johnny Manziel again. He's going to be at the Combine, but he's decided not to throw. And so there's been a little debate about this amongst people. Should he throw? Should he not throw? What are your thoughts on that, bud?
Well, I don't have a problem with it for me personally. It doesn't bother me. If he doesn't want to throw, he doesn't have to. He'll be throwing at his pro day. I'm interested to see his measurables and, like his 40 times and all that stuff. And he's got nothing to gain by throwing at the Combine. So if he doesn't want to throw, I'm fine with it.
Well, I disagree with you. I am a firm believer in the Combine. You're invited. Not everyone's invited to go to the Combine. So it is not, I guess it is a privilege to be invited to the Combine. It's not something that everyone gets to do. And it is like a job interview. Now, granted, I know he's going to go through the interview process. He's going to go through the measurables, go through the speed test, the vertical jumps. But for me, it would be like me calling somebody up, inviting them to interview for my company, and I ask them to do something during that interview, and they say, well, I'm not real comfortable doing that. I think I'd rather do it on my own time, in my own environment, so you can see how I do it. And so for me, I look at it from the aspect that this is your interview, and you should go out there and throw, because I know what your point is going to be, and I'll let you tell the listeners why you believe that the pro day is okay for him. But I disagree with it. I think it's an interview. He was invited. He should go through every drill that's there. I understand why he's not, the whole draft stock thing. But I come from the stand that you were invited. It's an interview. You need to go through every step of the process. But explain to the listeners why you feel that not throwing is beneficial for him, bud.
Well, it's going to be beneficial because you see it all the time with quarterbacks at the combine. Quarterbacks get used to, wide receivers at with the team that they're on. They get used to throwing to the guys. They know their timing on the routes. They know where they're going to, in certain spots. Like if you're running a 5-yard in and out, 5-yard and then in pattern, your guy where he's going to be, where he's going to break on the ball and everything like that. When you get to the combine, you're throwing to wide receivers you've never thrown to before. These are guys that you don't know, and they could screw up the timing and make the quarterback not look very good. And with Johnny Manziel, who's fighting to be the number 1 pick in the draft, he drafted by his hometown Houston Texans, he has nothing to really gain by throwing at the combine, because if he throws bad, then he can hurt that draft stock, and he can be, he could slip in the draft.
So let me ask you this then, Evan. So if that's the case, then why do they even have him throw then? Just not have everybody have a pro day? I mean, that's my thought, because I understand why he's doing it. But when I look at the list of all these quarterbacks, you're going to have Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr, you're going to have Fales, you're going to have McCarron, you're going to have Murray from Georgia, you're going to have Bortles from Central Florida. Why don't they just do it at their pro day then? Why don't they just eliminate the throwing at the combine if people have an option to not do a certain drill? Because wouldn't it be the same for all the players, that everyone feels more comfortable with their own guys? That's just my thought. The wide receivers. The wide receivers do have to catch. They have to show their stuff too. But I guess why not? They have guys that can throw to the wide receivers. Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, this is going to be one of those things, Bud, that if you and I kept going on this, we would take up our whole 30 minutes. And hopefully I get 30 minutes. Hopefully I don't get a call from work, which I'm expecting. But we definitely could go more than 5 minutes on this. So I think this is one of those topics that you and I should agree to disagree on, because otherwise we'll just go back and forth. We're like two stubborn old men right now. You have your opinion on this. I have mine. I don't think it's changing. So with that said, there's no changing it. Yeah, there's no changing. I'm not changing my way. Sometimes you do change my opinion. Not today, not on this subject, though. So who are some of the guys, Evan, that you want to really look at? I know we were talking, and some of the guys you want to look at, the Packers have no chance of getting. But there's also a group that the Packers will be looking at. But let's start with those players that are probably going to go in the upper half of the first round that will not be available when the Packers draft. Who are some of those guys that you're really looking forward to watching on the combine?
Well, the first guy we were just talking about is one of them, and Johnny Manziel. I'm just curious to see his measurables, what he scales in at with height, with weight. Check out the interviews, because he's got all eyes on him right now with how, quote unquote, crazy he acted during his time at Texas A&M, the party animal. How focused is he actually on an NFL career? Clowney from South Carolina, I'm curious to see. Dude is like about 6'6", about 290, 280, somewhere in that range, and he's talking about how he's going to run a 4.4 40-yard dash. So I'm very curious to see that. Sammy Watkins, wide receiver from Clemson, another guy that interests me. Really good receiver, really fast, runs great routes, had a heck of a bowl game against, I forget who Clemson played in their bowl game, but he had a heck of a bowl game in that one. And then Teddy Bridgewater, I'm curious to see why he isn't the consensus number one pick in the draft. You know, like that was the talk coming into the college football season, how he's going to be the number one. You know, he was going to be the number one pick in the draft. Now all of a sudden he's not. So I'm kind of curious to see why that is. One of the concerns is his size. They feel he's a little undersized and he might struggle to keep weight on at the NFL. So those are the guys I want to watch.
Well, and I'm right there with you. You know, when we look at, you know, these players, you know, the players you've just mentioned, you know, there's no way that the Packers are going to be able to get them. I'm kind of interested in looking at, you know, some of the different wide receivers that are out there. I know the Packers are probably going to go that route somewhere in this draft. But when I look at it, I definitely want to take a look at Watkins and Evans, because these two guys really intrigue me. I think those two guys right there are guys that can come in the league right away and start and make an impact. So I'm really interested in seeing, you know, what their measurables are and what their hands are like. You know, there is a difference between college and pro. I mean, you're going to have, and again, nothing against these quarterbacks, the Manziels, the Bridgewaters, you know, the Bortles. But going from that to an Aaron Rodgers or a Peyton Manning, even, you know, a Kaepernick and a Russell Wilson, the speed of the game is a little quicker. But I want to see those two guys for sure, because I like the wide receivers. I think it's a class where the wide receiver group is very deep, and I think the Packers can get some good value at wide receiver. And I'll talk about that in a little bit at receiver. But I also want to take a look at the safeties. I want to look and I want to see how Pryor does, because some people are saying he's the number one safety over Dix. And so when I look at this, I want to see why they've moved him ahead and why Pryor's the number one safety in the draft. And so that's where I'm going. But it's going to be pretty interesting to watch these players all weekend. And so when we move on, Evan, to some of the guys that the Packers might be interested in, and you and I, just so the listeners know, had not talked about this. You know, we had not talked about any of the players that we want to look at that the Packers might draft, just so everyone knows. But before I get into that, Evan, I do want to give some props to the founder of Your Daily Cowboys Football Fix, and that's Cass. For those listeners that have not had a chance to go to yourdailycowboysfootballfix.com, she has done a scouting report on 16 players, and she did it mostly for those players that she thought the Cowboys should draft. But if you go to the website and take a look at these articles, there's video of the player, there's some measurables of college, there's some of their stats, their weaknesses, their strengths. These are some really good articles that Cass and some of the staff have put together on 16 players. And there's a couple of players that she scouted that I think the Packers really should look at and have a chance to get. So, you know, with that said, Evan, you know, let's take a look at, you know, where we're going to go from here. Green Bay has some needs. So who are some of the players that you're looking at right now that the Packers might be interested in that will be at the Combine this weekend?
Yeah, well, the Packers' biggest needs, and that's kind of where I focused at, were all three phases of defense, really. Defensive line, linebacker, and safety. That's really what I focused on. And starting with safety, you brought up two of the guys. You have Calvin Pryor, free safety from Louisville. And you have Clinton-Dix, free safety from Alabama. Now, one of the concerns of Dix is the fact that he might have a tough time transitioning to the pro game because he is a big hitter. So some of the hits that he may have got away with in college, he might not be able to get away with in the NFL. And Kelvin Pryor is thought to be more of a complete safety at this point over Dix. Dix is going to be a heck of an NFL player, but he's just seen as Pryor's just seen as more of a complete prospect. The other safeties I'm looking at, if they can't get one of those guys in the first round, is you have Dion Bailey, safety from USC, and you have Jimmy Ward, safety from NIU. Jimmy Ward's one that's flying up draft boards right now. That if he's around at 21, if he has a strong combine, the Packers might have to consider. Dion Bailey's a pretty solid safety from USC. Looking at linebackers, there is Anthony Barr. He's a linebacker from USC, goes 6'4", 250. He's just a complete athlete. He could be a big fit in that 3-4 defense, moving him the outside, the inside, moving him all the way around, similar to what Green Bay likes to do with Clay Matthews. Then inside linebacker, you have C.J. Mosley from Alabama, who probably won't be around, but there's a chance. And then a guy I just started reading up on, Preston Brown, inside linebacker from Louisville, who really intrigues me. He seems to be just what the Packers are lacking. He's fast, he's physical, he's aggressive. And then some outside linebacker prospects. Other ones, you have Ethan Westbrook, another guy I just saw from Texas, West Texas A&M. He's 6'3", 264. He'll be a guy moving to linebacker in the pro. Kyle Van Noy, outside linebacker from BYU. He intrigues me a lot. He just seems to be a playmaker. He's someone we've talked about in the past. And then for the defensive line, Rashid Hagmann, he's a D tackle from Minnesota, goes 6'6", 315. There's a good chance that after his combine performance, he'll probably solidify a top 15 selection. We can always hope that he slips a little bit. But then there's also Stephen Pruitt from Notre Dame. He goes about 6'6", 310. He's more of he's a better pass rusher than Hagmann. Can be a big fit on that Packer defensive line. So those are the guys I'm really excited to see. I'm really excited to see what they do, how they do at the combine. Every single one of them are guys I would love to see in a Packer uniform.
Well, you had mentioned one, and that's Rashid Hagmann. That is a guy, and I would go back to your daily Cowboys football fix. There's a great article that Cass had put on the website about Hagmann in the scouting report. I don't think he's going to be available for the Packers. I think he'd be a great fit. I think he's going to be gone way before 21. So I'd like to watch him, but I don't think we're going to get him. I want to go back to the safety. You had mentioned that first, and we'll start from the back forward when I'm working at this. Outside of Pryor and Dix, I don't think the Packers should go safety in the first round because I think there's a drop-off after that safety to get a guy that's going to come in and make an impact. And I still have my reservations on whether or not Dix is even a guy that can come in on day one and solve the Packers' safety problem. You and I have talked about this. I think they need to go free agency. Now, do you pass up Dix at 21 if he's there? I don't think so. But I'm not sold that he's a guy that's going to be able to step in on day one. Like you said, I think he's got to learn the NFL game. But would he warrant the 21st pick? Sure. I would have no problem with that. But after that, I think it's a reach to go out and take another safety in the first round. If they do that, I think they're pressing. So I think Pryor is a guy that's going to go in and maybe be able to start in day one. Dix could, but I have some reservations about him. But I think they can get a good safety and develop a good safety. There's a group that I would consider in that second to third, fourth round where they can really get a good value pick. One of them is Bailey from Southern California. The other guy that I like this Huff guy from Wyoming. I know that he's projected, I'm looking at it right now, 5th or 6th round, but I just like the way he plays. He's a little bit small. He's only 5'11", but he really plays well. So I think he's a guy that would be able to fit into, into Capers' system. I think where else they need to go is inside linebacker, like you talked, and I think we had mentioned this earlier about Badgers in the draft, and I certainly am interested in taking a look at Borland to see what he does during this combine. Is he going to rise his stock, or is he going to stay status quo? because I think he's a guy, you and I talked about this, that would be a good fit inside for Green Bay. So I'm really interested in seeing what he does at the Combine to see what he does for his stock. But I think he'd be a good fit for the Packers also. And defensive tackle to me, Evan, I think is very deep in this draft. What do you think about the defensive tackle position? Do you think it's deep, or do you think that you're going to have to get a guy in the first through third round to get any value?
Well, I think it's pretty deep as well. I didn't really look at too many of the later round defensive guys, but I just know, Stephen Truth could be a late first round, second round pick, and Rashid Hagmann. Those are two guys that if they're available at that 21st pick, it's going to be very hard passing them off because they're both would bring great length to the defensive line, similar to what the Texans have with J.J. Watt. And they would bring physicality and playmaking ability. But the Packers' defensive line, Mike Daniels has been a pretty good pass rusher, but they would bring size, they would bring physicality, and they would bring something to the defensive line they really haven't had since Colin Jenkins. Mike Daniels is getting there, but I just look at pairing Daquan Jones on one side of the D-line with either Hagmann or Truth, and I start drooling over it. I might have to, get a new shirt on because, from the drool that I'm starting to get from those two guys.
Well, I think it's really deep too, and I guess this is because I had a chance to watch him play a bunch being out in Pennsylvania, and I know he's projected in the second or third round, but Daquan Jones from Penn State is a 6'4", 323-pound guy that I really like.
He's a good one.
Yeah, I really like him. And, I'm trying to look, and you know what, Evan, the draft is so fickle because once a position starts going, it's like every other team follows suit. And all of a sudden that position starts coming off the board. And so I would really like to see Daquan Jones in a Packer uniform. I got a chance, and he's a Big Ten guy, and so you probably know about him a little bit too, but he's that guy that I think would really fit good in that 3-4. I really like him. And then going up, like you said, I love Hagmann, the Minnesota guy. They've got him projected here late first, early second. I don't see him following that far, Evan. Once the scouts see this guy and they watch the tape and they see him our only hope is maybe he has a bad combine because the Packers will probably know a little bit about him being in the backyard. But this guy, I think, is a mid-round first pick. I don't think he makes it to 21. But if he does and they scoop him up, I'm okay with that too. So I think the Packers can get some real good value at the defensive tackle position. And you and I talked about this when we were talking about Packer free agents and what to do in free agency. I don't think they really need to go out and sign a big-name defensive tackle because I think they can get some value in the draft. And so that can put the money elsewhere. And like I was saying, safety-wise, I think they can use it on a safety. But again, I'm just an idiot with an opinion. The other position that I'm real interested in looking at, Evan, and you can chime in a little bit, is outside linebacker. And when I look at this, there's the guy, and Cass had him on her website too, and it's Max Bulla from Michigan State. I like what he does out there. I think he can be a good fit for the Packers. But I also, I don't think Barr's going to make it to the Packers. I mean, that's a guy that, you look at him, he's projected to go probably before 21. But I think there can be some value in that second to third round again. I also like the guy from BYU, Van Noy. I think he'd be a good fit for the Packers, but he's a late first round, early second round pick. It'll be interesting to see what the Packers want to do with that pick. Everybody's assuming that if Dix is there, that's the way the Packers are going. What do you think about that? Do you think if Dix is there, that's what they're going to do? I'll throw a scenario out, Evan. What if Dix and Hagmann are there at 21? Which way would you want the Packers to go? Would you want them to go Dix, or would you want them to go Hagmann at the defensive tackle?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty biased towards Hagmann a little bit because I've been, looking at him quite a bit. The thing that I'm not a big fan of Dix is, and here's just me personally, I've watched him film on him, and he's a big hitter. He's fast back there. He can cover a lot of ground in a hurry, but he doesn't. I don't like his tackling. I think he might have a hard time tackling at the next level. I really do. He just looks like he looks to go to the side of the guy and then tackle him. Like, he doesn't square up and tackle, and that worries me a little bit. Because if he does that against an Adrian Peterson's going to run him over. He's not going to be able to tackle Peterson. So that's what worries me. Hagelman, like I said, I have a bit of a bias towards him, but I would love to have him in Green Bay. I think him, along with Daquan Jones and whoever they can find to play the nose, and with Mike Daniels, and see what happens with Jarrell Worthy this year, that'll be a nice, young, physical, aggressive defensive line. If Worthy plays how he's capable of playing, then you got Hagmann, who's great against the rush and very great against the running game. He's very lengthy. Then you have Daquan Jones, who is lengthy and showed some promise getting after the quarterback last year, and then Daquan Jones, who led the defensive line in sacks. So I just with that front line of defense, I would be very happy to see. But if Clinton-Dix is the direction they go, I'm not going to be upset, but I would just prefer Hagelman.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, and it goes to what I said. Beyond Pryor, I don't see one of those impact safeties, like the Chancellor that we're going to get that's going to step in training camp, take the leadership role at safety, and change the defense. I think we need a veteran back there, and I'll stick to that. I'm just being real stubborn today, with what I'm thinking. But again, would I be upset? No. I mean, it would be a good pick. I'm not gonna argue, but I really think that we really can shore up the defensive line. And this is a very deep draft, and that doesn't mean that we can wait then until the second or third round. What it means is there's some talented guys that we can really get some good value at 21. I just don't know if Hagman's going to be there. But if he is, I would like to see that pick. And then, like I said, my other guy, I like Daquan Jones up there. But I also think, outside linebacker, we definitely have to address it, whether it's through free agency or through the draft. And so, when I look at the outside linebackers at the combine, you got your Max and your Bars, and they probably won't be there at 21. But then you got the Van Noy from BYU, like I said. You got Trevor Riley from Utah.
90 seconds.
Those are some guys that I'm going to be interested in seeing. So, but, it's going to be a fun combine, Evan. And, we can definitely, next Monday, we'll be able to recap what we saw and see if there might have been some guys that surprised us that we should probably put on the draft board. But with that said, Bud, is there anything else you got to add today as we're winding down here with just about a minute to go?
Not really any more
60 seconds.
Again, thanks for all the support people have been giving us, and I really enjoy doing this show with you, and I like the direction that's going in, and I'm just excited to where we're headed. So thank you for the listeners. Thank you to Cass, who lets us publish on her site, yourdailycowboysfootballfix.com. Give it, check it out, give it a look, and if again you're kind of bored tonight, check out YouTube and check out Red Light Sports Ramble, as you were getting at yesterday. We have a ton of episodes on there. Give us a check. Yeah,
it'll be 166 after tonight, Bud. And like you said, where this show is going, where it started, and where we're going to end up. I hate the cliches, but the sky's the limit for our show. And
10 seconds.
honestly, I have a great co-host with you, and so I appreciate the show every day. With that said, everyone, I do have to get back to work. I have a conference call coming up, so we will see you at the next red light. We'll get back at you tomorrow.